God, should we?
Oh, I thought I was going to be able to see myself.
Do you know what it is, guys?
I've
The
got to get-
technology is not happy tonight. Really.
Yeah,
Genuinely.
obviously some goblins getting into the technology, I think. Yeah,
Gremlins.
or gremlins, yeah. So yeah, so there you go. So 28% in the UK. I thought that was, like I say, I've always thought.
I thought it would be more.
I always thought I was in a minority, but apparently not.
I've genuinely.
Yeah.
I've genuinely thought it would be more than that.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I thought it would be up to. I thought it would be up like Pallet sort of stakes, 47%, whatever, but apparently not. And the US is only 46%.
Really?
Yeah. I used to like a goblin steak and kidney pudding. Does that make me believe it?
I'm sure there used to be a kitchen brand called Goblin as well, wasn't there? Goblin blender.
Yes, yes, there was.
Yeah. Wonder what happened to them.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so goblins and dwarfs and whatever. Obviously, the most famous dwarf story is the one about Snow White, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Snow White, the seven dwarfs and whatever. But I've always wondered what's the difference between goblin and dwarf. You know, I mean, obviously Diane said, you know, gnomes live in the garden. But what is the difference? What makes a goblin?
I mean, I've got to be honest with you. They got the goblin thing is, I believe that is yes, everybody. Your house is supposed to have a house goblin that looks after you.
You've been watching too much Harry Potter. Yeah.
No. He's supposed to look after you, and this is just what I've heard. And he's supposed to look after you, and he's supposed to. If he's a little bit mischievous, he's supposed to hide things. So sometimes when he can't find things around the house, it's supposed to be the house goblins, and he's supposed to say, he's supposed to ask the house goblin to return whatever it is you've lost. So lost a set of keys or stuff. Right. There's actually somebody who obviously we need to talk to about that type of stuff.
Do we?
Yeah. He'd be able to give you. He'd be quite an interesting conversation, I think.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Quite interesting.
So a goblin. Right, a goblin.
Searching for a goblin there.
Yeah, a well, if you find my house goblin, he's getting the sack.
You keep wrecking the place after you tidy up.
A goblin is a monstrous creature from European folklore, first detected in stories from the Middle Ages. They absorbed various and conflicting abilities, temperaments, and appearances, depending on the story and country of origin. They are almost always small and grotesque, mischievous or outright malicious, and greedy, especially for gold and jewelry. They often have magical abilities similar to a fairy or demon. Similar creatures include brownies, dwarfs, gnomes, imps, and kobolds, or house goblins, not just your kids.
My granddad used to tell us a story about the brownies.
Right.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
And he used to mention, and he used to talk about, they used to live underneath the bridge. There was a bridge in Sutton Park, in Sutton Coalfield. He used to take us up there when I was a kid, and he used to tell me that the brownies used to live under this.
Right.
And it was a tiny, you know, when you're a kid and you're hearing one of these, like, an adult's telling you a story, and you kind of,
you know,
you believe.
Sorry, dear. I'm like sort of being distracted by what I'm reading on the screen. That's why, or that's who the brownies are named after. The actual spirit, or whatever you want to call them.
They were supposed to be the little spirits that lived under, and you used to.
They're a household spirit from British folklore that is said to come out at night whilst the owners of the house are asleep and perform various. That's where you're getting your goblin from. It's a brownie, and that's why the brownies were named brownies, because they come out and do little tasks. Right?
But the brownies that my granddad used to tell us a story about was in this tiny little bridge in Sutton Park, and it was a storm culvert. You know the storm drains, and he put it. I
shall tell you.
Well, and Right, so Steve's put in the chat room, the wife is only 5'2". What category does she fall in?
Well, apparently it's all to do with the height, whether you're a gnome or a dwarf. So I'm gonna find out. Because there is an actual thing, but what is but yeah, these brownies come out and do all the little chores.
No, used to scare us though, because they used to live in this storm drain culvert. In certain part there's this big lake, and the Sea Scouts have got their little scout boat thing on it, or the sea cadet. There's a big boating lake, and then it's got like this runoff, it looks like the edge of a reservoir, you know, when the water runs down.
Yeah.
So obviously, if it rains, it comes down and it just drips down the side of this, and it's beautiful when it's all nice and clean and stuff. In the summer, it's lovely.
Yeah.
But there's a little where my granddad used to tell us the brownies used to live underneath this storm drain thing, and he had me utterly convinced that these little sort of like goblin-y sort of tiny little monster things were living underneath this.
Right.
Obviously, I believed in Santa at the time as well.
Yeah. But apparently the difference is well, what's the matter?
No, it's just just had a message through from Stephen. He's just actually sent this message to me before.
Right.
I'm not going to repeat it. It's very funny. I'll show you.
Right.
Sorry, Stephen.
Among the mythical creatures that humans fear are gnomes and dwarfs. The difference is there is a difference, and it's the origin of them. Records have shown that the term gnome is rooted from Renaissance period, and modern authors of the Renaissance period said that gnomes are small creatures with human-like appearances. They are humanoid who live underground. Gnome was a term first introduced, and he was a physician from the Renaissance period with a German-Swiss nationality. He was a great astrologer, botanist, and alchemist.
And that was a gnome, was it?
It was.
Right, Steve, I think there's your answer, because I know you're the horse from Germany, isn't you? He said tentatively.
Gnomes apparently don't like interacting with humans, and because they're unsociable personality, they only live underground. They are earth dwellers, as humans are free to move above the ground. The gnomes are just as free to move in their own territory.
She's half German. She's probably gonna hurt us when I say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that Dave off the radio?
Dwarfs were first introduced in the written records of Norse mythology. The term dwarf originated from several old scripts, and it said that the term dwarf originated from Old Norse word diviger, Old English word dwarg, and the Old German word gitwerk.
Oh,
you would encounter dwarf in one of
Germany,
poems, which is the Prose Edda. This written work of Snorri is a wonderful compilation of poems gathered from a rich traditional source. In this great piece of literature, the dwarfs are described as creatures with the same features of primal maggots.
Steve, I'm utterly confused now, so I don't know whether it makes a dwarf or a gnome. I really don't.
The dwarfs are said to be wise creatures, since the gods have forwarded them and bestowed upon them the ability to think. Since dwarfs are thought to be as thinking creatures, the images of dwarfs are often associated with smithing, crafting, and mining. Remember the story about the dwarfs and the shoemaker?
No.
No, do I? Because I'm sure it was the elves in the shoemaker.
I'm sure it was the elves in the
If gnomes are earth dwellers, dwarfs are seen to be friendly creatures. Some dwarfs also live underground, but some also freely living in the forests and mountains. So if you happen to see a human-like small creature in the mountains, they are probably dwarfs. If gnomes look like dwarfs in Snow White, the real dwarfs are viewed as small and ugly beings. So the summary is, gnomes and dwarfs are depicted as magical beings. The Renaissance period had shown records for gnomes, while the Norse mythology had shown records for dwarfs. Both gnomes and dwarfs are small human-like creatures.
She's put in there, wise creature, she's definitely not a dwarf.
The gnomes live underground, which is why they are called earth dwellers. On the other hand, dwarfs live in forests, mountains, and even underground.
Earth dwellers.
Gnomes don't like interacting with people.
Hold on, this isn't going back to the Hollow Earth thing and the living underground.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, here we go, kids.
Gnomes don't like interacting with people. However, dwarfs are very friendly. The image of gnomes are often accompanied with dwarfs of Snow White, while the dwarfs are depicted as small and ugly beings. Dwarfs are wise creatures. They are gifted with reason. Some say they are favoured by the gods, which is why they have the ability to think. So there you go. There's the difference.
Right. There we go. We're still confused. I am anyway.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It doesn't take a lot of this time of night to be fair.
Exactly. But that's the difference between a gnome and a dwarf. One thinks a lot, and the other one lives underground. Yeah. So it means absolutely nothing to me either.
That hasn't answered anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was thinking exactly the same.
If you wonder where we're referring to this, guys, if you can get yourself into the Ambron Radio chat room on ambronradio.com, we're having a cracking conversation there. Our resident Steve, resident Steve. He's resident. I can't even remember what I was going to say there. Now he's in the chat room and he's I think it's a bit of sport for him on a Thursday night. Winding this up, but it's a good one. He's making us giggle. But get yourself in the chat room if you're out and about there.
Yeah. Do you have visiting Steve as well? The regular Steve, visiting Steve.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So there we go. We still don't know the difference, although we know what a gnome is.
We know the definition, but we don't know what the difference is.
We don't know what the difference is. They're both ugly and they both look like each other, and one's a thinker, one's another thinker. One lives under the ground, one lives in forest, but can live under the ground. Yeah,
one doesn't like interacting with humans, and the other one does.
So basically, if it comes up and talks, it's a dwarf.
If it comes up and kicks in the nuts, what?
What? Are you calling my wife ugly, buddy? No, I never said anything. I'm just saying what the difference is. So if you
he's backpedaling. He's backpedaling.
And what you telling me? At no point did I call anybody ugly apart from the dwarfs. But if you're saying anyway, let's move on. Shall we? So dwarfs and gnomes are the same, except for the different. Take the sugar off him, Joe.
Yeah, he's digging.
I'm not taking it out. So anyway, where were we?
Damaged the carpet.
Yeah, exactly. So then we have the fairies.
Fairies.
Yeah.
Right. Okay then.
So fairies.
Yes.
What are fairies? Hit him with sounds like me and my family.
He's changing the subject, Stephen.
What?
Got your Sunday name there.
Exactly. A fairy is a type of mythical being or legendary creature in European folklore, especially from the Celtic, Slavic, German, English, and French. A form of spirit often described as metaphysical, supernatural, or preternatural.
Preternatural? I've heard that one before.
No. I'm going to have a look.
Is this like Willow the Wisp and all that carry on?
The preternatural is that which appears outside or beside the natural. It is suspended between the mundane and the miraculous.
Oh, so like a fantastical creature.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
wow, there you go.
That's what preternatural is. So there you go.
Learn something
exactly.
this evening, kids.
Myths and stories about fairies do not have a single origin, but are rather a collection of folk beliefs from disparate sources. Various folk theories about the origins of fairies include casting them as either demoted angels or demons in Christian tradition, as minor defies in pre-Christian pagan belief system.
Right, okay, right.
The spirit of the dead.
Okay, so the point is though, of fairies, right?
Yeah.
You see, I've always had the belief that a fairy, when I heard the fairy stories and stuff when I was kids, and I always remember that I was absolutely fascinated by those photographs that were taken. I think it was
come on, buddy, what are fairies on top?
The 1920s, and I had the girl who'd faked those photographs.
It was the sisters, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The two sisters had like sort of done paper cutouts and then had them at the bottom of the
But
garden.
they'd done the photo. I mean, I was fascinated by them as a kid because we had my nan, again, this is down at my nan and granddad's. They had a book and it had the picture of this girl. And there's one, I can see the picture. Mine,
Is that the one where she's right up close?
Yeah, and she's holding. It's as if she's holding this fairy.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you think, you know, I was absolutely fascinated by it because obviously I didn't know because I'd just seen the pictures. I hadn't sort of read the book or anything. But I mean, that bear in mind, I was probably about 4 or 5 anyway.
Oh yeah.
But might even be younger than that, and just been fascinated by this girl holding a fairy. And I always remember me granddad had a massive rhododendron bush in the garden.
Yeah.
And I used to go down and see if I could find the fairies. Obviously, I was a little kid at the time, but I was absolutely fascinated by this. But there it's saying it's always the fairy godmother. It's always a kindred spirit or a kind spirit.
Well, I said, and yet
they're saying there.
Yeah, they're saying that they're nasty. Because I mean the changeling. Don't know if you've heard the story of the changeling.
Is this to do with where the kids used to go disappear?
They steal the kid.
Yeah, and then
they replace them with a.
We've talked about this, haven't we?
Yeah, because it's one of the stories in law.
Yeah.
It's Brenda. I've got to think about it.
That was Paddy's thinking face.
Yeah, exactly.
That was. I wish I had my camera there.
It's her husband. She's from Ireland, and her husband believes that she's been possessed by a changeling.
Yeah, and he killed her.
And he set her on fire.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that the changelings don't like is flame.
Yeah.
So he threw her at the fire. She didn't actually land in the fire, she landed next to it. And then he poured lamp fuel on her. You know, it's like lamp oil.
Yeah.
Now, nobody knows whether he actually lit the lamp oil or whether it was the fact that she was next to the fire that the lamp oil lit. But however, she burned because the light oil took hold and burnt her to death. He was then done for murder.
Yeah.
He wasn't the only person involved in it. It was something like our uncle and I think even our father was in it.
Something like that. Come on, baby, light my fire.
Yeah, exactly. So
definitely.
You know, so he obviously believed the changelings were bad because, you know, that was the Irish folklore.
Yes.
Was that the changelings were bad and the changeling had stolen his wife. So he was like obviously trying to get his wife back, and he ended up killing her because of it. Like I say, he ended up doing time for murder because he murdered her, and she always ended up dead because of it. So you know,
it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So you know,
see, like I said, I've always seen that. I mean, like you say, whenever you've heard anybody talk about fairies, I've always looked at it and thought, oh, fairies are like the kindred spirits and nice spirits and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's quite.
Well, I think that's what we all grew up believing, isn't it? Because
it was the fairies were the good guys and the goblins.
Yeah, I was
going to
say when we talked about I think it was the first show, and we won about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And one about how the good witch.
Yes.
White people, you have a gala. It looks like a fairy.
Yes.
And you know, or it looks like what everybody perceives.
And then I got my big telling off because my good lady.
Yeah.
Because we'd been to see. Oh God Almighty, can't remember.
Wicked.
That was it. Wicked. Bloody hell. I've got the shovel in my hand now.
Yeah.
I've been to see Wicked, and it was God, and it was they were both nice witches, and then she went bad. And I can't remember the story. I'm going to shut up.
Yeah.
I'm digging.
Well, much folklore of fairies involve methods of protecting oneself from their malice. You can use things like cold iron, charms like talismans, etc., or various herbs, or simply shunning locations known to be theirs.
Oh, we're back to the herbs here.
Yeah, exactly. So if you, it depends on what herbs, isn't it?
I was going to say.
Less harmful pranks ascribed to fairies include tangling the hair of sleepers into
Yeah, the bed hair fairy.
Yeah, exactly. So
you haven't suffered with that,
so
have you,
Paddy? I used to have hair years ago. So when you get up in the morning, you've got tats. Apparently, it's the fairies tying your hair in knots. So yeah. So also the stealing small items. So when things go missing, you can blame the fairies because that's who's being stolen. Where did you leave it, Paddy?
Use that new wash and go, didn't you?
I watched it and went. So yeah, and leading a traveller astray.
How does a fairy speak?
Oh dear man.
I love that one.
So yeah, and leading travellers astray. They also have more dangerous behaviours. Any form of sudden death might have been blamed on the fairies.
That was also changelings though as well. If you remember when we talked about the changeling thing.
Yeah. Well, changelings are fairies.
Yes.
Yeah. That. So
it ties in.
The evident corpse of a magical replica of wood. And consumption is apparently caused by fairies. Tuberculosis. It's apparently caused by fairies.
This is obviously.
It forced young men and women to dance at revels every night, causing them to waste away for their lack of rest. Did you know? They're totally sort of moving away from the fairy. Did you know there was actual disease that killed people, or there was an actual phenomenon that killed people called the dancing disease?
Yes, I've heard
and it's
about
where
that.
people actually there's some music players and you cannot stop yourself from getting up to dance, and apparently you can't stop the music either. The music, it must play in your head or something, but you hear this music and you then start to dance. And apparently there's a woman danced herself to death because she danced for so long that she obviously died.
Yeah.
But yeah, the dancing.
I was going to say I've actually heard of that. There was an incident.
It gives a whole new meaning to killing it on the dance floor.
Murder on the dance floor. It was there was actually a incident where I believe it was a number of years ago, and I can't remember where it was, but actually somebody had actually taken ecstasy.
Right.
And they'd got onto the dance floor, and they reckoned that it was they'd suffered whatever it is they'd taken.
Yeah.
And it sent them, and off they went, and they just danced and danced and danced.
Yeah. Well, it's just dying of exhaustion, isn't it?
Yeah. And they went into heart failure.
Yeah.
No sort of liquid or they hadn't
yeah.
taken anything on board. They'd
Yeah.
been dancing for hours, but apparently it was a side effect of the drug in a way that it affected the body. So.
Yeah. And also rowan trees.
Rowan trees
are very sacred to fairies.
Is that right?
So if you kill a rowan tree or chop a rowan tree down, they're coming back. This sounds suspiciously like
Thanks, Stephen. Yes, of course, I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. If you're on the NE server, it's 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. 2 hours.
If you're on the worldwide server, it's only 1. Of course, get yourself
dance decades with Dave. But then again, after listening to this, would you want to dance? Because you're like, oh, hold on a minute, I might have called it the dancing.
I've got to admit,
the dancing plague. Dancing plague.
I've got to admit, I think, to be honest with you, obviously I record it in this studio, and I think I've damaged my chair because I'll have a little bit.
Because you're dancing away to it.
I'll be sort of like sit, sort of.
I'm listening to your show, Dave. I wouldn't dance it. No,
no, I just get a bit, you're sort of getting into it a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yes, it is. I'll definitely plug the show tomorrow night because I always give you a mention as well, Uncle Paddy.
No, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah. Christian mythology.
It's moving.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move away from that. King James, in his dissertation Demonologue, stated the term fairies referred to illusory spirits or demonic entities that prophesied to consorted with and transport the individuals they served in medieval times, a witch or sorcerer who had a compact with a familiar spirit received their service. So, Demoted angels. A Christian tenet held the fairies were classed as demoted
Would
angels.
that be classed the same as a fallen angel?
I don't know. Possibly. No, would a fallen angel not be somebody who's gone against the whole thing, like Lucifer? It was a fallen angel, wasn't it? Whereas the demoted angel would be somebody who, like, did something naughty but not bad enough to get kicked out.
No, I don't know.
Well, we'll soon find out.
So,
A Christian tenet held the fairies were classed as demoted angels. One story described a group of angels were voting, and God opened the gates of heaven shut. Those still in heaven remained angels. Those in hell became demons, and those caught in between became fairies. So that's what it's about. So they're not in hell. They're not in heaven. So it's they're left in limbo. It will become the fairies. Others wrote that some angels not being godly enough, yet not evil enough. So exactly what I was saying. They're not even enough to be fallen angels, but they're evil enough to be, not godly. Were thrown out of heaven. This concept may explain the tradition of paying alive to hell as fallen angels, although not quite devils. They could be viewed as subjects of Satan. So yeah.
see, that's it. But that kind of goes about. Again, I'll say it. That kind of goes against everything that you've known as a kid.
Yeah. I mean, at no point does it say.
I mean,
out of all these characteristics of fairies, I mean, like, you can on our night, because there's hundreds of them. There's not one of them says that the fairy's good.
But you see, the thing is, when I was a kid, it was the fairies were good, goblins were bad, and elves lived at the North Pole and helped Santa.
What about pixies?
Pixies. I don't. To be fair, it was. They lived at the bottom of the garden.
All I remember about pixies that had curled up toes. The shoes had like the little.
You not go to Clark's way?
I don't know. That's all I remember about pixies. Is that would they have pointy ears or were they elves?
Pixies and that. No, pixies.
Pixies and elves are the same, aren't they?
No. The only thing that about with pixies and stuff like that, I always used to remember years ago, used to have pixie boots.
What?
No, the girls used to wear pixie boots in the 80s. Right? And I always
did they have curled up toes?
No, but they were like they're kind of like they were like a high. They were sort of like just above the ankle. Like they were, I think they'd be described as ankle boots now, but we used to call them pixie boots.
Steve's about to tell us.
Yeah. And then you had.
Oh, he's about to make some remark. Whether he's going to tell us it doesn't matter.
They did when they took them off. Yeah.
Oh, that curled up toes when they took them off. Yeah.
Called Gopping
syndrome. Yeah, exactly.
But no, and they used to wear pixie boots, and then I always remember there was quite a fashionable haircut that was going around at the time that was called the pixie,
right?
Where the girls had the hair really, really short up the front, and then it was kind of all like fanned out at the front.
Right.
It's weird. But
I know pixie lot. No.
You're speaking to you again, you know a lot of pixies. Pixie lot, no.
A recorded Christian belief of the 17th century cast all fairies as demons. This perspective grew more popular with the rise of exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, it did.
Live long and prosper. Don't mess with super good.
Yeah, Vulcans.
Yeah.
All pixies are Vulcans.
Yeah.
This perspective grew more popular with the rise of Puritans. So Oliver Cromwell and his mates.
I was going to say, because the Puritans were quite an interest. I mean, any time somebody says Puritans to me, I always think of that sketch from Blackadder, where he's Puritan. They're supposed to be having a stag do.
Oh yeah. He's having a stag do in one room, and
he's Puritan.
His auntie's in the other room. Yeah,
auntie and uncle come and that, and then he walks in with a pair of plastic boobs on. She's there with her the cross. The cross.
Moira.
Oh, what's she called?
Moira. Something like that.
Turnips.
My return-ups? No, it definitely wasn't my return-ups.
Just reading the screen there.
Yeah.
Steve said to us, I'm trying to think what the actual sketches, and he's having
Yeah.
to go between the stag do,
Yeah.
where they're all drinking wildly, and obviously
Yeah.
the Puritans, and then he gets
I've just found out your house goblin.
All right.
It's not called a house. It's not called a goblin. It's called a hobgoblin.
Hobgoblin.
The hobgoblin was the
That's
house.
that's a alcoholic beverage, isn't it? The hobgoblin.
Professor Sprout. Aye.
Professor Sprout.
She played Professor Sprout, didn't she? Oh, I think there's something completely different.
I'm trying to think who that.
Myra, somebody. The hobgoblin, once a friendly household spirit, became classed as a weekly god. Miriam Morgars, that's her.
Yeah.
Dealing with fairies was considered a form of witchcraft and punished as such. In William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, the King of Fairies states that neither he nor his court fear the church bells, which the renowned author of Christian apologist C.S. Lewis cast as a politic disassociation from fairies.
Mm.
In an era of intellectual and religious upheaval, some Victorian reappraisals of the mythology cast defies its general in metaphors for natural events, which was later refuted by other authors. This contentious environment of thought contributed to the modern meaning of fairies.
Mm.
Spirits of the dead. One belief held that fairies are spirits of the dead.
Mm.
Well, that's your orbs, isn't it?
Well, there is the old factor and that, but I mean, like you see, the thing is it depends, because I mean, again, this one is quite interesting, because spirits of the dead, I would say more the fact where you believe that you have like a guardian angel. You know, everybody's supposed to have a guardian angel that looks after them, and that could be somebody who was a relative in spirit.
Yeah.
On
I was just getting a bit confused there, because
No.
Christine put, well, mine doesn't, I'm presuming that she's on about her.
Yeah, but
A fairy. Oh.
oh dear God, oh please. Oh dear God. Oh dear.
That's always a good idea to think before you speak.
This is a classic example of where Polly has not engaged his brain before opening his mouth. Oh, bless his cotton socks. Oh dear. Right then. So.
Oh. So yeah. So.
What time is it?
Oh,
Like
so
20 minutes
that's
ago.
20 minutes. There is a series that's fairy folklore involved.
Hold on, we've got your Sunday name again on the web. Patrick MC McGough.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Get your head out of the
There is a theory that fairy folklore evolved from folk memories of prehistoric race.
Ouch.
Newcomers superseded a body of early human or humanoid people, and memories of the defeated race developed in the modern concept of fairies. So basically, what they're saying is, or another theory for fairies, is that the fairies were the original people, and we then defeated them to, and obviously banished them to be fairies for the rest of their life.
I hope that comes out the wall. Just
there's a theory that fairies were intelligent species distinct from humans and angels. Anatomist classed gnomes and sylphs as elementals, meaning magical entities who personal and particular force of nature and exert powers over these forces.
Oh.
Folklore accounts have described fairies as spirits of the air.
Excellent. I'm in pain.
Oh. And then obviously you've got your protective charms, which is where they come in the good side, isn't it? In terms of protective charms, wearing clothing inside out, church bells. Oh no, this is how you protect yourself against a fairy.
Wearing your clothes inside out.
Wearing your clothes inside out.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. The next time you see I've gone.
So all these people that you're not, you'll go, oh,
No.
he's got his jumper on back the front,
No,
or inside out. No, he's protecting
seriously,
himself for the fairies.
seriously, right? I live in South Shields, right?
Yeah.
And I go shopping in a certain place in South Shields, and I'm not
Right.
going to say where I go
Oh,
shopping. Oh, and I'm obviously we're at that time of the year at the moment, but the amount of women that I see wearing black leggings inside out that I was in Asda.
Eh? How do you know that they're inside out, Dave?
Because you know what, the seam,
Right.
the actual seam, you know how like the seam with the trousers and stuff, so you've got the seam on your pants.
Right.
Now you know when you look inside
Oh,
the
yeah,
trousers
yeah,
and you've got
yeah,
the
yeah,
big
you see all the
seam and you
stitches
see
and
all the
whatever.
stitching
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
big lump hanging out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You
And
can
you-
see the stains.
Oh, yeah,
man.
Steve, I'll tell you what, I can
Steve.
tell you a story.
No.
No.
Let's stick with what you were saying.
But anyway, the amount of people,
But see, they're chasing the fairies.
that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, oh, you're chasing the fairies, pet. Do you need a hand? Are you all right? Oh, like that, you know what I mean?
Do you need some church bells or St. John's wort? Because that's another thing. And a four-leaf clover.
All right.
So that's why it's lucky, because it chases the fairies away. Are regarded as effective. In Newfoundland and folklore, the most popular type of fairy protection is bread.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm doing a Muttley impression. I've just had another message through.
Yeah.
That's class.
He can see this. Oh, yeah, I've just read that. So yeah, you can have in St. John's wort a euphemism for something.
So no, St.
No,
John's.
St. John's wort is actually St. John's wort.
St. John's wort is a natural.
Is it blisters?
No, St. John's wort's for, you can use it for depression, believe it or not. If you, in low moods.
I always thought it was for
No.
warts.
No.
It's is a flowering plant in the family Hypercaceae. Although used as a medicinal term with possible antidepressant activity. High quality evidence for such effects are still debated. A multitude of randomized controlled clinical trials and meta-analysis demonstrated that 8 perform extracts are more effective than placebo in the acute treatment of depressive disorders.
Yeah, it also could be used for seasonal affective disorder, mild anxiety, and sleep problems as well.
Yeah.
I know that because my mum used
Hyper what, buddy?
she used to.
Hypercaceae.
My mum used to have trouble sleeping, and she used to take it.
That's
She
right.
had it to sleep on.
I've heard of it. I've
Yeah.
never touched it, and but I have heard of St. John's wort.
Because the other one that's in the same family is one that's called Valerian.
Right.
And I'm not going to pronounce that one on the. That's brilliant. But that's the other one.
What is it? Was it a string willy?
Stinking Willy.
For some reason, I could see an R there
No,
after the T.
it's definitely stinking.
No, I'm saying for some reason I
Thomas.
could see an R.
You've got same
No,
family, St. John's.
Cat-eye, or however you spell it, means something different when I was a kid.
We're absolutely, we've got the pot now. No, St. John's wort comes from, you've got St. John's wort, Valerian, Stinking Willy, yarrow, and mountain arnica. Now, I know
Right.
arnica is used for.
Well, none of them fed off fairies, just St. John's wort.
All right, well, there you go.
Um,
I was just thinking from the same
yeah,
same sort of German chamomile.
I really shouldn't come on on a Thursday.
No, you should definitely, Steve.
So varying from stale bread to a slice of fresh homemade bread, bread is associated with the home and the hearth, as well as with industry and the taming of nature, and as such seems to be disliked by some types of fairies.
Right.
On the other hand, in much of Celtic folklore, baked goods are traditionally offered to fairies.
Right.
So,
I knew there was-
it depends on where you're at. So it's like, here's some bread, that'll chase them away. No, they like the bread.
Yeah, but the thing
No,
is,
no,
I was
no.
always told that apparently you're supposed to you're supposed to look after the fairies, and the fairies will look after you. That makes sense. That sounds so wrong, doesn't it? But you're
Right.
supposed to leave
I don't know about
an offering for the fairy.
Well,
That was in a book I used to read. when I was a
in
kid.
County Wexford, back in 1882, it was reported that if an infant is carried out after dark, a piece of bread is wrapped in its bib, and this protects it from any witchcraft or evil.
Yeah, don't read that out loud. Yeah.
Bells also have ambiguous role. While they protect against fairies, the fairies riding on horseback, such as the Fairy Queen, often have bells on their horns. So it can protect against ordinary flying fairies, but if it's horseback fairies, you've got to watch out.
But if it's a horseback fairy, is that like little tiny little horses?
I don't know. Possibly.
Because obviously, if a fairy,
Are fairies necessarily small?
well, you see, this is kind of
Because if you go to Tolkien and his elves are quite quite tall, but
yeah,
elves are like meant to be little gnomes,
yeah,
pixies, fairies, and that sort of thing.
hobgoblins and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
dear.
It is also believed that to know the name of a particular fairy could summon it to you and force it to do your bidding. The name could be used as an insult towards the fairy in question, but it could also rather contradictory be used to grant powers and gift to the user. I would have thought that was more along the lines of goblins, because what do you call them? That famous goblin.
Dobby.
Tommy. No, he's a house elf. No,
I don't know.
that famous goblin man who was a bit naughty.
Goblin.
What do you call him? I'm sure somebody on that. Oh man, she had to guess his name.
Goblin.
And she couldn't think what his name was. Or she ended up getting his name and he ended up stamping so hard that he went through the floor.
Was this a film or something?
It's a story, it's a fairy tale. Rumpelstiltskin. Exactly, Rumpelstiltskin. He was a bit naughty, wasn't he? And he was controlled by people knowing his name, and that's why he got a bit stroppy, because she found out
But you
his
know,
name.
I've got to be honest with you, I don't know the story of Rumpelstiltskin.
You've never heard the story?
No.
What? Yeah, man, Rumpelstiltskin.
No, somebody, what was the story?
Rumpelstiltskin. Read it. It's like an old story. It was in Ladybird books when I was a child.
All right.
Yeah, it's a very old story.
Yeah.
My aunt's like, what?
Shock
You
face,
know,
No, I've got to be honest with you. There was it was like we had a fairy tales book when I was a kid, but it was all stuff like Aladdin.
Yeah. Some of the legends of fairies. Sometimes fairies are described as assuming the guise of an animal. In Scotland, it was peculiar to the fairy woman to assume the shape of deer, while witches became mice, hares, cats, gulls, or black sheep. In the legend of Nochigona, in order to frighten a farmer who pastured his herd on fairy ground, a fairy queen took on the appearance of a great horse with wings of an eagle and the tail of a dragon, hissing loudly and spitting fire, and she would change into a little man lame of a leg with.
This is
No, I'm just making sure that because I seen that wrong, and so I was just making sure that I was reading the right thing. A little man with a lame leg with a bull's head.
This sounds like a blog I used to
And
work with.
a lambent flame playing around it.
Mm.
In the 19th century, a child ballad, Lady Isabel and the Elf Knight. The Elf Knight is a blue-beard figure, and Isabel must trick and kill him to preserve her life. The child ballad Tamlin reveals that the title character, though living among the fairies and having fairy powers, was in fact an earthly knight, and though his life was pleasant now, he feared that the fairies would pay him as their life to hell.
Mm.
go. They have been claimed by people in the past, like William Blake, to have seen fairy funerals.
Right.
Alan Cunningham, in his Lives of Eminent British Painters, records that William Blake claimed to have seen a fairy funeral. Did you ever see a fairy's funeral, madam? Said Blake to a lady who happened to be stood next to him. Never, sir, said the lady. I have, said Blake, but not before last night. And he went on to tell how in his garden he had seen the procession of creatures of the size and colour of green and grey grasshoppers, bearing a body laid out on a rose leaf, which they buried with song and then disappeared. They are believed to be an omen of death.
Oh, right.
So if you see a fairy funeral, then someone's about to die.
That's not good. That Steve is in the chat room saying, "By God, it's a good job you read that out, Paddy. You could have been permanently removed from broadcasting." You pre-read it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to get. Sometimes you've actually got to think about it because I think sometimes you've got to curb the sense of humour.
Exactly. Oh yeah, definitely. The word fairy was used to describe an individual inhabitant of fairy before the time of Chaucer.
See, that's challenged quite a bit of what I thought a fairy was, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I know, joking aside, it's. I always thought it was kind of there were sort of nice people who lived at the garden, and they were, yes, they could be a little bit mischievous and stuff, but no, that's kind of.
The modern depiction of fairies was shaped in literature of Romanticism during the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Writers such as Walter Scott and James Hogg were inspired by folklore which featured fairies, such as the Border Ballads. The era saw an increase in the popularity of collecting of fairy folklore and an increase in the creation of original works with fairy characters. In Rudyard Kipling's Puck of Pook's Hill, Puck holds to scorn the moralizing fairies of other Victorian works. The period also saw a revival of the older themes in fantasy literature, such as C.S. Lewis's Narnia books, which, while featuring many such classical beings as fauns and dryads, etc., with hags, giants, and other creatures of folklore fairy tradition. Victorian flower fairies were popularised in part by Queen Mary's keen interest in fairy art and British illustrator and poet Mary Barker's series of 8 books published in 1923 through to 1948. Imagery of fairies in literature became prettier and smaller as time progressed. Andrew Lang complained, so when we were saying about the size, it's because in later time they became smaller.
All right.
They were of like our size.
So obviously, like Tolkien was, they were saying that they were like same size as us, same size as humans.
Yeah.
But obviously, as
the years have
they shrunk.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing is, there's a lot of things like Victorian wise and stuff. I mean, a lot of things we've been talking about tonight, even down to the Egyptology.
Yeah.
Is a lot of stuff's was written by the antiquarians.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of poetic license use, so we just wonders how much. You've got to ask yourself how much has actually been lost over the transit of it.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's
definitely. Well, that's it exactly.
It's
a story of the origin of fairies appears in a chapter about Peter Pan, the little white bird, and was incorporated into the later works about the character Barry wrote. When the first baby laughed for the first time, his laugh broke into a million pieces, and they all went skipping about. That was the beginning of fairies. Fairies are seen in Neverland in Peter and Wendy, the novel version of Peter Pan stories, published in 1911. And its character, Tinkerbell, has become a pop culture icon.
Well,
when Peter Pan is gone Wendy from pirates, the story says after a time he fell asleep and someone steady fairies had to climb over him, and on the way home from an orgy, and he did say that, any of the other boys obstructing the fairy path at night, they would have mischieved, but they just tweaked Pete's nose and passed off.
There you go.
Exactly.
The little naughty fairies.
Yeah.
That's that is, like I say, that's completely like torn apart what you think you knew as a kid, like
Yeah, yeah.
genuine.
Fairies in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Images of fairies have appeared in illustrations, often in books of fairy tales, as well as in photographic-based media and sculpture. Some artists known for their depiction of fairies include Mary Parker, who we mentioned earlier, Amy Brown, David Delmore, Meredith Diffman.
Is that Amy Brown? We know Amy
Yeah,
Brown,
exactly. I don't think so. This was like way back. The fairy doors of Anne Abor are small doors installed into local buildings. Local children believe there are front doors of fairy houses. In some cases, small furniture, dishes, and various other things can be seen beyond the doors. The Victorian era was particularly noted for fairy paintings. The Victorian painter Richard Dadd created paintings of fairy folk with a sinister and malign tone. Other Victorian artists who depicted fairies include John Astor, John Atkinson, Daniel Maclise, and Joseph Noel Paton. And interested in fairy themed and enjoyed a brief renaissance following the publication of the Cottonley Fairy photographs.
Yeah, I was. I can't remember. Do you know? I can't remember whether there was a bit of a story on those photographs on it was on Blue Peter or something. When I was a kid.
There are a series of 5 photographs taken by Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, 2 young cousins who lived in Cottonley near Bradford in England in 1917. When the first photographs were taken, Elsie was 16 years old and Frances was 9. The pictures came to the attention of writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who used them to illustrate an article on fairies he had been commissioned in Wright for the Christmas 1920 edition of the Strand magazine. Doyle, as a spiritualist, as we know, was enthusiastic about the photographs and interpreted them as clear and visible evidence of psychic phenomena. Public reaction was mixed. Some accepted the images as genuine, others believed that they had been faked.
Do you know what it is? Like I said, when it was
for a clever man, he was quite dumb, wasn't he?
Well, I've got to be honest with you. I was fascinated by those photographs. Like I said,
When you were a child.
Yeah, but like you say, like looking back at it now and stuff, and think to yourself, yes, they were faked and things like that. But I mean, the thing is like Conan Doyle. I mean, I've actually got his book. I've read his book actually to do with like the history.
I've got one of his books. The couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you think of it, he is quite. His mind to work the way. I mean, some of those Sherlock Holmes stories and things.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Stuff he's
for a clever man, he's quite dumb. Because
I don't think it's not the fact that he's dumb. I think it's the fact is that he's.
Well, he is because he's quite easily.
Well, no. If that was kind of his, if he wants to believe it, he wants to believe it, doesn't he? So no.
What?
If he wants to believe
it,
but
he wants to believe that he wants to believe in something that wasn't real. The thing is, if you look at the photographs, you can see that they're false. You okay, Dave? Your voice sounds like it's breaking a bit.
Yeah. Just yes. He's got
the thing that makes me sort of wonder is it was early 1980s when they revealed that it was a hoax. Now I'm sure I didn't actually see these photographs. I remember seeing when I was little.
I'm sure that was when it was on Blue Peter or something.
I'm sure in the 80s, when it was revealed, I mean, one of them died in 88 and the other one died in 86. So it obviously had to be before 86 for them both to. So I'd have seen them before because I'd been like sort of 80.
But the thing is, like I say, it depends, is it? Because the thing is, like we've had this conversation. What I'm trying to say is we've had this conversation before. If you think about it, even when we're looking in those paranormal forums and you see these like sort of, I mean, you see these old photographs.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm quite critical of old photographs.
Yeah.
Having said that, I did see one the other day that was really quite good,
Right.
but it wasn't. It was classed. They said it was no photograph. I would have said it was something slightly different, but never
Right.
mind, because there was no way that was like a dust spot orb or whatever.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, is you've got those types of people that would, if Conan Doyle had his faith and everything was real and everything was right and stuff like that, if that's his way his brain works, then that's fine.
No, I think when I say he was a clever man but dumb, he saw them photos and instantly believed them.
Mm-hmm.
Made no attempt to debunk them or anything. He literally he saw them and took the word of two young girls that they were fairies. When you look at the actual photographs, you can see that they're not real.
Like you said, I haven't seen them in years.
You can see that the cardboard cutouts. It is quite obvious. So that's what I mean by he was dumb in the fact of because he believes in spiritualism. That's not the reason why I'm saying he's dumb. But because he believed in spiritualism, he was willing to accept everything rather than looking at it like sort of rather than looking at it like Sherlock Holmes would.
Yes.
Like sort of looking at it logically. He would like instantly go, yeah, that's real. And there's many stories about him, which I'm sure at some point will cross Arthur Conan Doyle's path. But there's many stories where he's gone in with both feet rather than thinking before he's done something. But isn't that the case though? Clever people tend to lack things like common sense. I was
going to say I've met there's a couple of guys I've met who are very, very, very. I mean, I would say intelligence off the charts.
But then the really
common
dumb.
sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Common sense is like
Well, that's right. The little and often it's little trivial things that we can't get their head round.
Yeah.
Because that's not how their mind thinks. So they don't think of like these little trivial things. But yeah, so the interest in the Cockney fairies gradually declined after about 1921. Both girls married and lived abroad for a time after they grew up, yet the photos continued to hold the public imagination. In 1966, a reporter from the Daily Express newspaper traced Elsie, who had by then returned to the UK. Elsie left open the possibility that she believed she had photographed her thoughts, and the media once again began interested in the story.
Yeah.
In the early 1980s, Elsie and Frances both admitted that the photographs were fake, using cardboard cutouts of fairies, copied from popular children's books at the time. But Frances maintained that the fifth and final photograph was genuine. The photographs and two of the cameras used are on display in the National Scientific and Media Museum in Bradford in England. And I've seen that because I've been. Yeah. But the thing is, they're saying that the fifth one. I'm just trying to see if I can.
I'm trying to think which one that is.
The fourth one. The fifth one is the.
That's not the one where it's sitting on that.
No. The fifth one. The fifth one is that. It's where it's like a ghost figure of the fairies.
Right. Yeah.
He obviously fooled lots and lots of people because they're obviously many people for years. I mean, they took them in 1917, and then it was, although it sort of like disappeared as it was still there. People didn't actually debunk it, and nobody has actually debunked it.
Yeah.
It's them who came out and said, we faked it.
Yeah.
But and as I say, you look at them and you can see that they are fake. You can see that the cardboard cut out. But the one that they're saying that isn't fake, the last one, is like a ghostly image of fairies. So it could be real because of the fact that we're going back to 1917. How and you're talking about two young girls. I mean, one was 16 and one was 9. I don't know many 16, 9-year-old children who are that clever with a camera. Even nowadays, with the type of cameras that we've got. They can put put a Snapchat filter on and this, that, and the other. But how many, without training, because we're talking about two young girls with their father's Brownie camera or whatever.
That's the point. I mean, the fact. I mean, joking aside, the level on just on that photo there alone, technically.
Yeah.
To take that photograph, and I mean, like you said, I know my photos.
Yeah.
And that would be.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So it's very, very. I mean, the thing is, like you said, it's very, very interesting the fact that they've been able to put that together.
Yeah.
And again, you know.
I mean, you see, like that one, the very first one, where she's sitting and the fairies around it. You can see the cardboard cutouts. Number
it's
two.
The one where she's sitting and she's like holding. It looks as though she's holding a fairy in her hand. Is the one that the photograph I remember from childhood.
I'm trying to find, because there's the 5. There's there's that one where she's sort of like
that's it.
sitting
That's the one.
looking at it.
Yeah.
Or there's that one where it's like floating next to her head. Seeing all this, and everybody obviously kind of.
I think what we need to do is, I mean, because obviously we've come at the end of the show there anyway. We're on there.
Yeah.
What we need to do is need to put it on. It's a bit like the little girl with Cry Wolf. She said, the 4 are fake, so who would believe them on the 5th?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say that. I was going to say exactly that.
It's right, but I mean, like I say, the thing is from a technical point of view, for that type of camera, and the type of exposure and stuff, and I mean, considering the time that it was as well, because I mean, you obviously slap bang in the middle of World War One there. Well, the end of World War One.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I mean,
and I think that's probably why it was so believable, was because people's minds were elsewhere.
Yeah, but
so it was so easy, and we were not clutching for a bit of relief.
Yeah, probably.
You know, so there's a couple of girls. The fairies have come to visit them, and remember, this is the time when fairies had started to get a good sort of reputation. They were no longer the demons. So this was the time that they were starting to get really good. So is it a case of these two young girls have had a visit from fairies, so people are now like, oh, it's not nice.
You've got, I mean, the thing is like you say, going back to that sort of time as well. I mean, 1917, you've got the Angel of Mons, which was on the battlefield as well, where the guys had supposed to see the angels and stuff like that. So I mean, the thing is, I mean, again, a lot of people put that down to sort of things like post-traumatic stress disorder, things like, you know, being on the battlefield and being in a stressful situation.
Plus, you could also go back down to the root of, you know, it being a fairy being the spirit of a dead person. Obviously, there was lots of people died during, especially during the Somme, which was that
the year before, 1916.
So there was a lot of people died the year before. Well, in fact.
Well, to be fair,
if you look at all the battles
just
or
under
the
a million
wars,
people
it's still more. There's more people died in the Battle of the Somme than what has died in every subsequent war since, not battle, but war since. So I mean, obviously it was horrific. So could it be, you know, the logic of the unknown soldier?
Yeah.
That people are now believing that them fairies are a loved one of theirs.
Yeah.
You know, it's the spirit of one of their loved ones.
I mean, the thing is, we've talked about this, about having that little bit of comfort, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, at the end of the day, is I've been watching a fabulous series on television recently called World on Fire.
Yeah.
It was the last one, I believe, of this series.
Right.
And, you know, wanting to believe in sort of the times that they're in, things going around them and stuff. And taking that, the story that I'm talking about is one of the characters in that movie. He's been in the trenches in the First World War. Obviously, the Second World War's kicked off. He's in that Guards for Peace. He's part of the Peace Corps as well. His son's gone off to war. His son's gone missing on Dunkirk Beach, etc. You know, and it's kind of, and he's quite traumatized by it. And you sort of had that around the time, and it was that factor of people just clinging on to something something positive.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, it was always, until that telegraph came, you would hear the story of a battalion that had been wiped out, or this, that, the other. But until that telegraph bounced on the welcome mat,
Is it?
You believe that, you know, your relative, father, son, brother, whatever, got through it.
In that, right, this lad's gone missing on Dunkirk Beach. He's actually in the Navy.
Yeah.
He's gone missing on Dunkirk Beach, and there's two guys in an RAF uniform that come and knock on his door, and this bloke has, because he's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, he starts, or shell shock as it was called in those days, he goes into a full-on panic attack. And he refuses to open the door because if he doesn't hear that information,
it's what you call
he's still alive.
It's that experiment, isn't it? Schroeder. The Schroeder cat.
Yeah. Schrödinger.
Yeah.
Schrödinger.
It until he opens that door, his son's
still
is still alive.
But it's what actually happened was it was a bloke who was calling on his daughter to come and ask her to do some, because she's a singer or whatever. And she saw who it was, and she said, "It's all right, Dad. They're here for me." But it was just the sheer panic you see that they're going through, which was really genuinely quite. I mean, you could imagine the situation.
Well, you couldn't, could you? Without actually living it, you can't imagine it. You can watch. I mean, it's what I've said all the time. You can watch a film, and you can, you know, hear stories, and you can listen to soldiers telling you stories and whatever. But until the moment you step into that environment, you will never ever know the true horror. Because if you're in that environment, then you've got the smells, you've got the coldness, the wetness, whatever that's around you, and you've got what's going on in front of you.
I always remember my gran told us a story about because she knew my great grandfather who was killed in the First World War in 1915. My gran told us a story because she knew his wife Louisa. And she always told us the story about, because there was quite a few stories.
Of course.
I remember and stuff, and about the hardships that they went through, and the suffering, and the fact that the breadwinner had gone, you know. And
well, that's it. I mean,
had a handful
it
of
was
kids.
back in the day before women had the right to vote and stuff like that, didn't they? So, they were like sort of classed as second-class citizens, as it was. So therefore, they didn't go out to work. And as you say, it was their job to look after the house. It was their job to bring up the kids. It was their job to feed the husband when he came in. So, you know, so to lose, as you say, the income would have been devastating. And to lose them in a way that he was lost, a way that was he had no control over. You know, I mean, I've often, it's obviously, you know, thousands of ways that people can move off this mortal coil. There's the let's go to sleep, never wake up the next day type of stuff, which is what everybody wants. You know, I mean, nobody wants to die any other way but that. But there's so many different ways. But sometimes you have a control over it. Like a car accident, you had control of that because you got into that car. You drove that car. You then had the accident for whatever reason. But war, you have no control over. You are sent to war by somebody else. It's not your choice to go to war. Well, I know there was people who obviously signed up and what have you.
I mean,
lots of bravado, wasn't it? It was sort of like, I'll go and fight for my country, because that's what Kissinger did, wasn't it? It was all about building up this image and what have you.
Great grandfather was actually a regular soldier, and he came out not long. I think it was in 1909. I think. 1909 or whatever he came out. He was a painter and decorator. And when war broke out, he went straight. He was a sergeant when he came out, and he went straight back down. And he re-enlisted as a private, kept his service number. Because he had a 4-digit service number, and off he went. Obviously, when those boys went to war, when they turned up and did that initial right, I'm an ex-serviceman, I want to join,
Oh,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah,
go
yeah,
back
yeah,
and do the fight, etc., etc.
Yeah.
They were told them they're going to be back by Christmas.
Yeah, the whole war
So
was
see,
meant to be
the
up by Christmas, wasn't it?
understatement of the
So it was,
millennium.
yeah, exactly. So it was all about like sort of, you know, let's get it over and done with. Come on, lads, let's get across there. I don't know what this is going to do with paranormal, but well, it was obviously to do with the fairies. But yeah, we've gone down a whole completely different route and whatever. But yeah, there's no, so to lose somebody in that situation, and unless you've actually been in that situation,
Yeah.
and nobody ever will. There's nobody alive to this day, or that's about to be born, that will ever experience that, because war has changed completely.
Yeah.
We'll never ever have the trenches. You know, we'll never have, you know, mustard gas and stuff like that, because it's advanced so much.
Yeah.
I mean, now obviously we're fighting people who we don't know who they are because they're wearing civilian clothing, you know, and they're going into a room full of soldiers and they've got a backpack on, or they're wearing under the clothes and what have you. So the face of the enemy has changed completely because of the fact that we no longer, I mean, in both wars, it was men in uniform fighting men in uniform.
Yeah.
And every war before that was men in uniform fighting uniform. But then I think it was the 60s. Was it the 60s? Well, in fact, it was round about the time of World War One when the IRB, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and they started to attack and they were wearing civilian clothing.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, we had the troubles in Northern Ireland, and they all wore civilian clothing.
I've spoken to a number of guys that have come back and have been out in places like Iraq and stuff like that, in Afghanistan, and they've come back and have said literally that there's a bloke standing shooting a rifle at them. The minute he's run out of his magazines, run out, he's got no rounds left.
Yeah.
He'll put his weapon down, and technically he can walk right in front of you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they can't shoot him because he's classed as a civilian, and the rules of engagement state.
You must be, you or somebody of your troop must be in immediate danger.
Yeah.
There's no immediate danger if he's got no weapon.
Yeah. So anyway, we digress. But never mind. I think we crashed over there again.
Well, that's well, it's, you know,
station manager's going to go nuts.
Sorry, I know him quite well, so I shall have a word with him. But yeah, we shall obviously, you know, leave it at that. So there is still loads of sort of pseudoscience to talk about. We had the mythical creatures obviously there. There's another one about creatures.
All right.
Which will that'll probably be a show in itself. So I'm not even going to start. I'll mention what it is, but that's a show in itself. So I'm not even going to mention anything about it apart from cryptozoology.
Right. Well,
because like I say, that will be a show in itself. Well, it's been a lot, hasn't it? yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it definitely has, Steve.
So yeah, but I mean, there's so many, you know, I mean, something that we used, it comes under pseudoscience, the EVP.
Yes.
It comes under pseudoscience. The dowsing with the crystals comes under pseudoscience.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's so much, and this is what I'm saying, we'll be on for weeks discussing pseudoscience.
You can't wait. You can't wait. Excellent.
We are still waiting for the Black Bush to get back in touch with us.
Yes.
About going there. It may be a case of just turning up one night to the place and having a word with her and then organising it from there.
Well, as I said, I mean, the thing is, like you say, we still haven't, obviously moving forward, we still need plenty of people to get in contact with us.
Yeah, I mean, you know, even if people did ring tonight, the phone's dead, so it would have made no difference. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice for people to get in touch and whatever. But you know, what 7th week we're in now?
Yeah.
So
obviously we're not here next week. Remember that, guys?
Yeah, So it'll be like a fortnight's time when we'll be back.
It is actually a fortnight's time. When I checked it there before. Right. So we shall be back.
So you could have a night off next week.
Yeah. So we'll be back on the 28th.
Right.
And it's we're back on the 5th as well, Thursday the 5th,
right.
And it's the 12th when I'm away.
Right.
12th.
Right. Well, 12th. What's the week after?
The 19th.
Right. So we'll be on that one.
And then the one after that's the 26th
I was
of
going to say
December,
we'll not be on that one.
the Christmas.
You
special.
can't just turn to man and into the black bush. You can't just turn to man and empty. Well, I did actually mean I was going to go walk through the door and go, let me see you ghosts. You know, I mean, I have actually spoke to the landlady, so she knows that we're coming. She just doesn't know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll sort that out, and that'll obviously be another visit. I've still got the schooner to get in touch with. That's the one. The
In Gateshead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get in touch with them. But if you know of anywhere else
Yes.
that you want us to visit or anything like that, then please give us a shout, and we will obviously do that. But for tonight, I think we've had enough pseudoscience, and I believe it is not I believe it's 25 past midnight. So I think it's time for us to shuffle off and head off to our beds. Well, head off to McDonald's in our case, but to head off to our beds and obviously, you know, take it from there. So until Sunday when I'm back on the air,
And I'm on.
you're on there.
I'm on tonight.
Yeah, but I'm talking about me.
Oh.
I'm not on tonight, am I? So
No.
I shall see you all on Sunday for the Paddy McGough show.
I'll see you tonight.
So
Dance
until then,
Decades.
exactly, Dance Decades, 7 p.m.
Yes.
on either station, whichever one you listen to. If you listen to the Northeast station, you will get 2 hours.
Yes.
If you listen to the international station, you'll only get an hour.
Yes.
But it's on 7 o'clock at both stations. So anyway, until Dave tonight and me on Sunday, that's about it. So it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Thanks very much.
Good night.
Oh, Paddy.